I'm not the kind of man you betray without consequences.
I thought marriage was for life. Turns out, so is herpes, and both leave you with permanent scars that flare up at the worst possible moments. My name is Mark Dorsey, and I'm 38 years old with the cynicism of a man twice my age. 10 years as a Connecticut state trooper taught me that people lie about everything, their speed, their sobriety, and especially their fidelity. What I didn't expect was that my own wife would become Exhibit A in my personal case study of human deception. Elise and I had been married for 12 years, together for 15. She worked for Lux Destinations, a high-end travel company that catered to clients who considered first-class seating a human right. I transitioned from law enforcement to insurance investigation 3 years ago. Better hours, better pay, and significantly fewer people trying to shoot me on a Tuesday afternoon. Our daughter Emma was 10, sharp as a tack, and had inherited my talent for sarcasm along with her mother's striking green eyes. She was the only reason I bothered getting up most mornings, especially lately. "Dad, Mom's perfume smells like lies," Emma announced over breakfast one Thursday morning in March. She was eating Lucky Charms and reading a book about forensic science, a gift from me that had horrified Elise. "What does a lie smell like, kiddo?" I asked, pouring coffee that tasted like disappointment. "Sweet on top, but rotten underneath, like when fruit goes bad, but you spray it with air freshener." Kids see everything. They just lack the vocabulary to explain what they're witnessing until it's too late. Elise had been working late more often, taking mysterious phone calls that sent her into the bathroom with the door locked. She'd started wearing new perfume, something French and expensive, that made our bedroom smell like a brothel trying to pass itself off as a flower shop. Her laptop had acquired a password, and she guarded her phone like it contained state secrets. The signs were all there, bright as neon in a strip club window. I just hadn't wanted to read them. "Your mother works hard," I told Emma, though the words tasted like sawdust. "Sure, Dad. And I work hard at pretending to believe you." That night, Elise claimed she had to fly to Boston for a client meeting. Some wealthy couple wanted to book a month-long European tour, and apparently this required an overnight trip to finalize details. She kissed me goodbye with lips that felt cold and distant, like kissing a mannequin that had learned to fake affection. At 2:47 a.m., her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She'd forgotten it. First mistake. The text was in French, but I'd picked up enough during our honeymoon in Paris to understand the important parts. "Can't wait to see you again, mon amour. Tonight, your bed or mine? J." I stared at that message for a full minute, my coffee-stained insurance investigation training kicking in, evidence, documentation, proof. I took a photo with my own phone, then deleted the original message. If Elise wanted to play games, she'd learn that I'd spent a decade learning the rules from professionals. The next morning, I started digging. Elise's credit card statements revealed charges at restaurants I'd never been to, hotels in Boston where she'd supposedly been alone, and a jewelry store purchase for a men's watch that had never appeared on my wrist. Her laptop might have been password protected, but she'd left her email logged in on the kitchen tablet. Another mistake. The emails painted a picture that made my stomach turn. Julien Lafitte, a French art dealer who'd relocated to Boston 2 years ago. Sophisticated, cultured, and apparently everything I wasn't. Their correspondence read like a romance novel, written by someone who'd never experienced actual love, all passion and poetry and promises of exotic adventures. But it was the travel itinerary I found that really twisted the knife. Not just Boston, Paris, a week-long trip scheduled for next month with hotel reservations for 2 and tickets to art galleries I couldn't pronounce. "Dad, you look like someone told you Santa Claus was a tax auditor," Emma observed that evening, finding me staring at my laptop screen in the kitchen. "Just work stuff, kiddo." "Is Mom having an affair?" The question hit me like a sledgehammer to the solar plexus. "What makes you ask that?" Emma shrugged, spooning ice cream directly from the container, a privilege I allowed when Elise wasn't home to enforce proper bowl usage. "She acts like people do in movies when they're cheating. Plus, she's been getting weird phone calls and smiling at her phone like it's telling her jokes. You don't make her smile like that anymore." Out of the mouths of babes and forensic science enthusiasts. "Relationships are complicated, Em." "Not really. People either tell the truth or they don't. Mom doesn't." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to Elise breathe beside me. She'd returned from Boston with stories about the demanding clients and their impossible requests, but she'd also returned with new lingerie that she claimed was for feeling confident at work. Because nothing says professional competence like a push-up bra that could double as architectural scaffolding. I could have confronted her then, Should have, probably. But I'm an investigator by training and a masochist by marriage. I wanted the whole truth, not just the parts she'd admit to when cornered. The opportunity came 2 weeks later. I'd been working a case involving staged car accidents, insurance fraud, that was costing my company hundreds of thousands of dollars. The surveillance had taken me to Hartford, where I'd spent 6 hours watching a supposedly disabled man play basketball with the enthusiasm of someone whose back injury was purely theoretical. I finished early and decided to surprise Elise with dinner from her favorite Thai restaurant. The house was dark when I pulled into our driveway at 4:30 p.m., but her car was there, along with a silver BMW I didn't recognize. The front door was unlocked. I could hear voices from upstairs. Elise's laugh, breathy and excited in a way I hadn't heard in months, and a man's voice with a French accent thick enough to spread on toast. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking like a countdown timer. Our bedroom door was open. They hadn't even bothered to close it, so confident were they in their deception. Elise was without a stitch of clothing, straddling a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne advertisement. Dark hair, chiseled jaw, and the kind of tan that came from Mediterranean vacations rather than Connecticut winters. He was everything I wasn't: sophisticated where I was practical, cultured where I was crude, and currently occupying my side of the bed. "Well," I said, standing in the doorway with a bag of pad thai cooling in my hands. "This explains the new perfume." They sprang apart like teenagers caught by parents, all scrambling limbs and panicked expressions. Elise grabbed a sheet to cover herself, her face cycling through surprise, guilt, and defiance in rapid succession. "Mark, you're supposed to be working!" "Insurance fraud waits for no man, sweetheart. Unlike some people's wives, apparently." The French guy, Julien, I presumed, was trying to locate his pants while maintaining what he probably thought was dignity. Hard to look sophisticated when you're hopping on one foot with your designer underwear around your ankles. "You must be the famous Julien," I continued, setting the Thai food on the dresser with deliberate calm. "I've read so much about you. Well, not read exactly, more like investigated. Did you know your art gallery in Boston has some interesting connections to forgery rings in Europe? Fascinating stuff." His face went pale beneath that perfect tan. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. Just like you don't know that you're married to a woman named Claudette who thinks you're in New York on business this week. Small world, isn't it?" Elise was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "How do you—" "I'm a professional investigator, honey. It's literally my job to uncover things people want to keep hidden. You might have mentioned that before deciding to redecorate our marriage with a French accent." Julien had finally managed to get his pants on and was reaching for his shirt. I stepped aside to let him pass, then grabbed his arm as he tried to slip by. "Nice underpants, by the way. Did you get those at the Louvre gift shop?" He tried to pull away, but 10 years of police work had given me a grip like a bear trap. "Let me go." "Oh, I'm letting you go, all right. Straight out the front door, into your overpriced German car, and back to whatever rock you crawled out from under. But first, we're going to have a little chat about boundaries." I guided him downstairs with the kind of firm politeness I'd learned from escorting drunk drivers to holding cells. Elise followed, wrapped in our wedding quilt like a toga of infidelity. "Mark, please, let me explain." "Explain what? How you've been playing house with Pierre here while I've been working to pay for the house you're defiling? Or maybe you want to explain the credit card charges, the secret phone calls, or the fact that you've been lying to our daughter's face for months?" I opened the front door and gave Julian a gentle but unmistakable push toward the threshold. "Here's how this works, Frenchie. You're going to get in your car, drive back to Boston, and pretend this never happened. If I see you within 50 miles of my family again, I'll make sure your wife gets copies of every email, every photo, and every receipt from your little romantic adventure. Are we clear?" He straightened his shirt and tried to salvage some dignity. "This isn't over." "You're right, it's not. It never started, because you don't exist in my world anymore. Have a lovely drive back to Massachusetts. Try not to rear-end anyone. I'd hate for you to become another insurance claim I have to investigate." I closed the door and turned to face Elise, who was clutching the quilt like armor that could protect her from the consequences of her choices. "So," I said, walking past her toward the kitchen where the Thai food was getting cold. "How was your day, dear?" The silence that followed was the kind you hear in morgues and tax offices, heavy with the weight of irreversible consequences. Elise stood at the bottom of the stairs, wrapped in our wedding quilt, looking like Lady Macbeth after a particularly rough night of regicide. "Mark, we need to talk." Do we? Because I feel like your actions have been pretty eloquent. Sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words, and watching my wife ride another man like she's trying to break him in for the Kentucky Derby painted quite the narrative. She flinched. Good. I wanted her to feel every word like a slap. It's not what you think. Really. Because I think I walked in on my wife of 12 years having love with a French art dealer in our marital bed, while our 10-year-old daughter was at school. If that's not what happened, then I'm apparently having the most vivid hallucination since I stopped drinking. I opened the Thai food containers and began eating pad Thai directly from the carton. If my marriage was ending, I wasn't going to let good noodles go to waste. I never meant for this to happen. Of course not. You just accidentally fell onto his Johnson, repeatedly, for months. These things happen. Elise sat down across from me at the kitchen table, still clutching the quilt. Her hair was messed in a way that would have been attractive under different circumstances, but now just looked like evidence of adultery. You don't understand what it's like being married to you. Enlighten me. What's so terrible about being married to a man who works hard, pays the bills, loves his daughter, and hasn't cheated on his wife even once in 15 years? I can see how that would be unbearable. You're never here. Even when you're here, you're not really here. You're thinking about work or watching TV or making those stupid jokes about everything. When was the last time we went somewhere nice together? When was the last time you looked at me like I was beautiful instead of just there? I set down the pad Thai and really looked at her. She was beautiful, even now. Even wrapped in guilt and our wedding quilt, even with her mascara smeared and her hair looking like she'd been wrestling with a tornado. That was the worst part. I still loved her, even knowing what she'd done. So you decided to find someone who would look at you the right way. How's that working out for you? Julien makes me feel alive. He takes me to art galleries and wine tastings. He writes me poetry and sends me flowers. He makes me feel like a woman instead of just a wife and mother. And what does that make me? The guy who pays for your poetry and flowers? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Where's Emma? I asked, suddenly realizing our daughter wasn't home from school yet. Soccer practice. She won't be back until 6. At least we'd been spared the trauma of explaining to a 10-year-old why mommy was playing gymnastics without any clothes with a stranger. Small mercies. How long? I asked. Mark, how long, Elise? 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lies, deception, and playing the fool while my wife auditioned for a French remake of our marriage. I thought about all the nights she'd claimed to be working late. All the business trips that suddenly made sense. All the times she'd been distant and distracted, and I'd attributed it to stress. Are you in love with him? The question hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I wasn't sure I wanted the answer, but I needed it. I think so. There it was. The truth, finally. It felt like being punched in the stomach by someone wearing brass knuckles made of broken dreams. Do you want a divorce? She looked surprised by the question, as if she hadn't thought that far ahead. As if she'd imagined she could keep both lives running parallel forever, like some kind of emotional embezzlement scheme. I don't know. I'm confused. Well, let me help clear things up for you. You can't have both. You can't keep me as your safety net while you go bungee jumping with Jean-Claude Van Damme upstairs. So make a choice. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You're either married to me or you're not. There's no middle ground where you get to keep the house, the husband, and the French pastry on the side. Emma's voice came from the front door. Dad? Mom? I'm home. Elise and I looked at each other in panic. Our daughter didn't need to walk into the aftermath of our domestic nuclear explosion. Go get dressed, I whispered. We'll finish this later. She nodded and hurried upstairs, leaving me to face Emma alone with the taste of betrayal still bitter in my mouth. Hey, kiddo, how was soccer? Emma dumped her backpack by the door and looked around the kitchen, her sharp eyes taking in the Thai food containers and my probably shell-shocked expression. Fine. Why do you look like someone told you taxes were going up again? Just a long day at work. She opened the refrigerator and grabbed a juice box, studying me with the intensity of a forensic investigator. Where's Mom? Upstairs, changing clothes. Uh-huh. And whose fancy car is in the driveway? I looked out the window. Julian's BMW was still there, which meant he was either hiding in the bushes or had walked back to Boston in his designer shoes. Neither option seemed likely. Probably a neighbor's friend. Emma gave me a look that suggested she wasn't buying what I was selling. Dad, I'm 10, not stupid. Mom's having an affair, isn't she? There was no point in lying. Emma had inherited my investigative instincts and her mother's ability to see through deception. She'd figure it out eventually, and I'd rather she heard the truth from me than discovered it on her own. Yeah, kiddo, she is. Emma nodded like I'd confirmed something she'd already known. Are you getting divorced? I don't know yet. Are you okay? That was the question I'd been avoiding asking myself. Was I okay? My wife had been cheating on me for 6 months with a man who probably pronounced croissant correctly and knew the difference between Monet and Manet. I'd caught them in my own bed, in my own house, probably using my Egyptian cotton sheets that I'd paid for with money earned investigating other people's lies and betrayals. Was I okay? Heck no. I will be, I told Emma, and hoped it was true. Good, because if you're not okay, then I'm not okay, and I have a science test tomorrow that I can't fail because I'm worried about my parents' marriage. I hugged her, breathing in the smell of grass stains and childhood innocence. At least one good thing had come from my marriage to Elise. Your parents' problems are not your responsibility, Em. You focus on your science test and let me worry about the grown-up stuff. Promise? Promise. Elise came downstairs wearing jeans and a sweater, looking almost normal except for the guilt that clung to her like cheap perfume. She hugged Emma and asked about soccer practice, playing the part of a concerned mother while I watched and wondered how long she'd been this good at acting. After dinner, after Emma had gone to bed, after we'd performed the elaborate dance of normalcy for our daughter's benefit, Elise and I sat in the living room like strangers waiting for a bus that would take us in opposite directions. So what happens now? She asked. Now you decide what you want, but you decide fast and you decide final. I'm not going to sit here and watch you audition other men for my job while you keep me around as backup. And if I choose Julien, then you pack your things and go, but Emma stays with me. Her eyes flashed with anger. You can't keep my daughter from me. Our daughter. And I'm not keeping her from you. I'm keeping her from the chaos you're creating. You want to run off with your French boyfriend and play house in Boston? Fine. But you don't get to drag Emma into your midlife crisis. A judge won't see it that way. Maybe not. But a judge will definitely be interested in your affair, your lies, and your complete disregard for our daughter's stability. You want to roll those dice? She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands like they held answers to questions she didn't know how to ask. I need time to think. You've had 6 months to think. Time's up. That night, we slept in the same bed for what I suspected would be the last time. Elise lay on her side facing away from me, and I stared at the ceiling, wondering how 15 years of marriage had come down to this. 2 people sharing a mattress and nothing else. The next morning, I woke up alone. Elise's side of the bed was empty, her pillow cold. I found the note on the kitchen counter, next to the coffee maker that still held yesterday's grounds. Mark, I've gone to stay with my sister for a few days. I need space to figure things out. Please don't call. I'll be in touch soon. E? Emma found me reading the note when she came down for breakfast. She's gone, isn't she? For now? Is she coming back? I looked at my daughter standing in the kitchen in her school uniform with her backpack slung over one shoulder and realized that whatever happened next, I had to make sure she was protected from the fallout. I don't know, kiddo, but whatever happens, you and I are going to be fine. She nodded, grabbed a granola bar from the pantry and headed for the door. Dad? Yeah? When this is all over, can we get a dog? I laughed despite everything. Yeah, Em, we can get a dog. After she left for school, I sat in the empty kitchen and tried to figure out what came next. My wife was gone, probably planning her escape to France with a man who wore scarves unironically and knew the proper way to eat escargot. My marriage was over, even if the paperwork hadn't been filed yet. But I wasn't going to make it easy for them. If Elise wanted to blow up our lives for a French art dealer with questionable business connections, she was going to learn that I hadn't spent 10 years as a cop and 3 years as an investigator without picking up a few skills along the way. It was time to do what I did best: investigate, gather evidence, and build a case. The only difference was, this time, it was personal. Very personal. 3 days passed without word from Elise. 3 days of explaining to Emma why Mommy wasn't home, why dinner was takeout again, and why Daddy was spending his evenings on the laptop instead of watching TV. 3 days of sleeping alone in a bed that smelled like betrayal and expensive French cologne. On the fourth day, I decided to stop being a victim and start being an investigator. My friend Rico Martinez had been my partner when I was still wearing a badge. He'd left the force a year before I did, started his own private investigation business, and made a decent living catching cheating spouses and insurance fraudsters. If anyone could help me navigate the murky waters of marital espionage, it was Rico. I found him in his office above a sandwich shop in downtown Hartford, surrounded by case files and empty coffee cups. He looked up when I walked in, took one look at my face, and reached for the bottle of whiskey he kept in his desk drawer. "Let me guess, Elise, how'd you know? You look like a man who's been hit by a truck driven by someone he trusted. Plus, you've been married 12 years. Statistically speaking, you were overdue for some kind of marital disaster." Rico poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed me one. "Tell Uncle Rico all about it." I told him everything. The affair, the confrontation, the note, the French art dealer who looked like he'd stepped out of a romance novel written by someone who'd never experienced actual romance. "Julien Lafitte," Rico repeated, typing the name into his computer. "Art dealer in Boston. Let's see what Google has to say about your wife's new boyfriend." The search results were extensive. Julien had a gallery in the Back Bay, specialized in European art, and had been featured in several Boston magazine articles about the city's cultural scene. He looked even more sophisticated in his professional photos, the kind of man who probably knew which fork to use for salad and had opinions about wine that didn't come in boxes. "Guy's got money," Rico observed. "Gallery's in an expensive part of town, drives a BMW, and look at this, he's married." The wedding announcement was from 2 years ago. Julien Lafitte and Claudette Moreau, married in a ceremony in Nice, France. She was beautiful in that effortless European way that made American women spend fortunes trying to achieve the same look. "So he's cheating on his wife with your wife. Classy. Can you find out more about him?" Rico grinned. "Can I find out more about him?" "Mark, my friend, you're talking to a man who once tracked down a deadbeat dad using nothing but his Netflix viewing history. Of course, I can find out more about him." Over the next week, Rico compiled a dossier on Julien Lafitte that would have impressed the FBI. The man had secrets layered like an onion, and each layer made me more determined to expose him for what he really was. His art gallery was successful, but not successful enough to explain his lifestyle. The BMW, the expensive clothes, the ability to wine and dine married women in 4-star restaurants. It all pointed to income sources that weren't entirely legitimate. "Look at this," Rico said, pointing to financial records he'd obtained through methods I didn't ask about. "Guy's got money coming in from shell companies in France and Switzerland. That's either family money or something shadier." "How shady are we talking?" "Art forgery shady. Maybe money laundering shady. The kind of shady that makes the FBI very interested in your business practices." It got better. Julienne's marriage to Claudette was apparently more business arrangement than love match. She lived in France while he operated in Boston, and according to Rico's sources, she had no idea about his extracurricular activities with married American women. "Your wife isn't his first affair," Rico informed me. "Guy's got a pattern. Targets married women with money, wines, and dines them, then moves on when things get complicated. Except this time, he might have miscalculated." "How so?" "Because this time, he's messing with the wife of a man who knows how to investigate, document, and destroy someone's life using perfectly legal methods." That evening, I sat Emma down for a conversation I'd been dreading. "Mom's not coming back, is she?" Emma asked before I could figure out how to start. "Not anytime soon." "Because of the French guy?" "Yeah, kiddo, because of the French guy." Emma nodded like she'd been expecting this news. "Are you going to do something about it?" "What do you mean?" "Dad, I've watched you work cases. You don't just let people get away with lying and cheating and hurting other people. Are you going to let them get away with hurting us?" Out of the mouths of babes and future law enforcement officers. "What would you want me to do?" Emma thought about it seriously, her 10-year-old mind working through the complexities of adult relationships and consequences. "I want you to make them sorry they hurt us. Not like hurt them back, but make them understand that actions have consequences. You always taught me that actions have consequences. Yes, they do. So show them." That night, after Emma was asleep, I started planning. Not revenge. Revenge was emotional, messy, and often illegal. I was planning justice, which was cold, calculated, and perfectly legal when executed properly. Julien Lafitte thought he could seduce my wife, destroy my marriage, and walk away without consequences. He was about to learn that actions indeed have consequences, and some consequences have compound interest. I started with the art gallery. A few phone calls to contacts in law enforcement revealed that Julian's business had been flagged by customs officials for importing artwork with questionable provenance. Nothing prosecutable yet, but enough to suggest that his success wasn't entirely based on legitimate sales. Next, I researched Claudette. She lived in Nice, worked as a curator for a small museum, and according to her social media accounts, believed her husband was a faithful businessman building their future in America. The photos showed a woman who clearly loved her husband and trusted him completely. She deserved to know the truth. I also discovered that Elise had been using our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms, dinners, and gifts for Julienne. Technically, she was stealing from our marital assets to fund her affair. That would be useful in divorce proceedings. But the most interesting discovery came from Rico's deep dive into Julian's background. The man had been investigated by French authorities 3 years ago for selling forged paintings to American collectors. The investigation had been dropped due to lack of evidence, but the suspicion remained. Guy's dirty, Rico confirmed. Question is, how dirty? And can we prove it? We don't need to prove it. We just need to make sure the right people know about it. Over the next few days, I made several anonymous phone calls to the FBI's art crime team, suggesting they take another look at Julian Lafitte's import records, to the IRS, wondering if they were aware of certain cash transactions that might indicate unreported income, to immigration services, questioning whether Julienne's visa status was entirely legitimate. I also sent a carefully crafted email to Claudette, including photos of Julian with Elise at restaurants around Boston. I didn't identify myself, just signed it, a concerned friend who believes you deserve the truth. The response came faster than I'd expected. Claudette called Julienne's gallery the next day, speaking rapid French to whoever answered the phone. According to Rico's contact who spoke French, she was demanding to know who the American hoe was and why her husband was acting like a pig in Boston. Julian tried calling Elise repeatedly that day. I knew because she finally called me. Mark, we need to talk. Do we? I thought you needed space to figure things out. Someone sent photos to Julian's wife. She's threatening to divorce him and expose his business to the authorities. That's terrible. I can't imagine who would do such a thing. Don't play dumb. This has your fingerprints all over it. Elise, I'm an insurance investigator. I investigate insurance fraud. What Julian does with his marriage and his business is none of my concern, unless, of course, it affects my family. You're destroying innocent people's lives. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just making sure the truth comes to light. If the truth is destructive, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to redecorate our marriage with a French accent. She was quiet for a moment. Julian wants to meet with you. I bet he does. Will you? I thought about it. Meeting with Julian could be dangerous, not physically, but emotionally. I might be tempted to do something that would land me in jail and leave Emma without either parent. On the other hand, I was curious to hear what the man who'd stolen my wife had to say for himself. Fine, but it's on my terms, in a public place, and if he so much as looks at me wrong, I'm calling every law enforcement contact I have and suggesting they audit his entire life. Tomorrow, the Starbucks on Main Street, 2 o'clock. I'll be there. After I hung up, Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas. Was that Mom? Yeah. Is she coming home? No, kiddo, I don't think she is. Emma nodded and walked over to hug me. I'm sorry, Dad. For what? That Mom chose the French guy instead of us. I hugged her back, breathing in the smell of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. That's not your fault, Em. That's her choice and her loss. Are you going to be okay? Yeah, kiddo, we're going to be fine. And for the first time since I'd caught Elise in bed with another man, I actually believed it. Starbucks at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon was exactly what you'd expect. A handful of college students typing furiously on laptops, a few business people grabbing caffeine fixes between meetings, and 2 middle-aged women discussing their book club's latest selection with the intensity of Supreme Court justices debating constitutional law. I arrived 10 minutes early and chose a table near the back, positioning myself so I could see the entrance and the exit. Old cop habits die hard, especially when you're about to meet the man who's been sleeping with your wife for 6 months. Julian walked in at exactly 2 o'clock, scanning the room until he spotted me. He looked different than he had that afternoon in my bedroom. Less sophisticated, more desperate. His usually perfect hair was slightly messed, and there were dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. Good. He approached my table cautiously, like someone walking toward a potentially rabid dog. Mark? Julian, please, sit down. Can I buy you a coffee? It's the least I can do for the man who's been screwing my wife. He winced and sat down across from me. I think we need to discuss this situation like civilized men. Civilized men don't sleep with other men's wives in their marital beds. But sure, let's discuss it. What did you want to talk about? Julian folded his hands on the table, trying to project calm authority. It might have worked if his hands hadn't been shaking slightly. First, I want you to know that I never intended for things to go this far with Elise. Really? So when you were writing her poetry and taking her to art galleries and booking hotel rooms, you thought you were just being friendly. That's some aggressive friendship, Pierre. My name is Julian. I know what your name is. I also know about your wife, Claudette, your questionable business practices, and your pattern of seducing married American women. Should I continue? Or do you want to tell me what you really came here to discuss? His composure cracked slightly. You sent those photos to my wife. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. I leaned forward, letting him see exactly how much I despised him. Don't you dare accuse me of lying. You've been lying to your wife, lying to my wife, and lying to yourself if you think there wouldn't be consequences for your actions. If someone sent photos to Claudette, maybe it's because she deserved to know the truth about what her husband does when he's supposed to be building their future in America. You're destroying innocent people's lives. I'm not destroying anything. You destroyed your marriage when you decided to cheat. You destroyed my marriage when you decided to seduce my wife. You destroyed any claim to innocence when you started lying to everyone who trusted you. I'm just making sure the truth comes to light. Julian ran his hands through his hair, messing it further. What do you want? I want you to stay away from my wife and my daughter. I want you to go back to France and try to salvage whatever's left of your marriage to that poor woman who actually believed you were faithful. And I want you to understand that if you ever come near my family again, I will make sure every law enforcement agency in 2 countries knows about your business practices. You can't prove anything. Maybe not. But I don't need to prove anything to destroy your reputation. I just need to ask the right questions to the right people and let them draw their own conclusions. How long do you think your gallery will stay in business if the FBI starts auditing your import records? How many of your wealthy clients will keep buying art from you if they start wondering whether your pieces are authentic? His face had gone pale. You're blackmailing me. I'm explaining consequences. You made choices, and now you get to live with the results of those choices. That's not blackmail. That's life. We sat in silence for a moment, surrounded by the mundane sounds of coffee shop life. Espresso machines hissing, conversations murmuring, chairs scraping against tile floors. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that 2 men were sitting 10 feet away discussing the destruction of marriages and the price of betrayal. What about Elise? Julian asked finally. What about her? She loves me. She thinks she loves you. There's a difference. Elise loves the idea of you, the romance, the excitement, the escape from ordinary life. She loves feeling like the main character in a French romance novel. But love built on lies and betrayal isn't really love, is it? It's just elaborate self-deception. You don't know her like I do, I laughed, and it came out harsher than I'd intended. I've known her for 15 years. I've seen her with food poisoning, watched her cry at movies, held her hand through her father's funeral, and supported her through every crisis and celebration of her adult life. You've known her for 6 months of stolen afternoons and hotel room fantasies. Which one of us really knows her? She's not happy with you. Maybe not. But she's not going to be happy with you either, because happiness isn't something you can find in another person. It's something you have to create for yourself, and Elise has never learned that lesson. Julian shifted in his chair, looking increasingly uncomfortable. So, what happens now? Now you go back to Boston, pack up your gallery, and go home to France. You try to convince your wife to forgive you, and you stay away from married American women. And if you're very lucky, the various law enforcement agencies that are suddenly interested in your business practices will find nothing prosecutable. And if I don't, then you'll discover that I have a lot of friends in law enforcement, a talent for investigation, and absolutely nothing left to lose. How do you think that will work out for you? He stared at me for a long moment, probably trying to decide if I was bluffing. I wasn't. and something in my expression must have convinced him. I need to talk to Elise. No, you don't. You need to leave her alone so she can figure out what she really wants without you whispering French poetry in her ear and promising her a life that doesn't exist. She'll come to France with me. Maybe, but probably not. Because when the romance wears off and reality sets in, she'll realize that she's traded a stable life with a man who loved her for an uncertain future with a man who's already proven he can't be trusted. I stood up, leaving my untouched coffee on the table. This conversation is over. Stay away from my family, Julian. That's not a request. I walked away without looking back, but I could feel his eyes on me until I reached the door. That evening, I got a call from Rico. Your French friend just booked a flight to Boston for tomorrow morning. How do you know that? I have my sources, but here's the interesting part. He also booked a flight from Boston to Paris for Friday. One-way ticket. He's running. Looks like it. Whatever you said to him, it worked. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that my plan was working. Sadness that it had come to this. 15 years of marriage, reduced to threatening my wife's lover in a coffee shop and watching him flee the country. What about Elise? No flight bookings yet, but she's been staying at her sister's house in Westport, and according to my source at the phone company, she's been making a lot of international calls. To France? To France. That night, Emma and I ordered pizza and watched a movie. She didn't ask about her mother, and I didn't volunteer any information. We were learning to exist in this new reality where it was just the two of us. And so far, we were managing. Dad? Yeah, kiddo? When all this is over, are you going to be okay? I looked at my daughter, curled up next to me on the couch with pizza sauce on her chin and concern in her eyes that no 10-year-old should have to feel. Yeah, Em, I'm going to be fine. We're going to be fine. Promise? Promise. And this time, I actually meant it. Friday morning brought rain and a phone call from Elise. I was making Emma breakfast scrambled eggs and toast because cereal gets old when you're playing single parent, when her ringtone cut through the kitchen silence like a blade. Don't answer it, Emma advised, not looking up from her science homework. She'll just make you sad again. Smart kid. But I answered anyway. Hello, Elise. Mark, we need to talk. Really talk this time. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can you meet me somewhere? I looked at Emma, who was pretending to focus on her homework while obviously listening to every word. When and where? Tonight, after Emma's asleep, I'll come to the house. Fine, but we're talking in the kitchen, not upstairs. And if you're coming to tell me you're moving to France, you can save us both the time and just send a postcard. She was quiet for a moment. How did you... Never mind. I'll see you tonight. After Emma left for school, I called Rico. Julian's flight leaves at 6 tonight, he informed me. Elise has been at her sister's place all week, but she drove back toward your neighborhood this morning. She's coming over tonight to talk. You ready for that? Was I ready? I'd spent 2 weeks investigating my wife's lover, threatening him in coffee shops, and watching my marriage disintegrate in real time. I'd explained to my 10-year-old daughter why mommy wasn't coming home, and helped her process the reality that sometimes people you love make choices that hurt you. I'd slept alone in a bed that used to represent partnership and commitment and now just felt like expensive furniture. Was I ready to hear Elise tell me she was choosing her French art dealer over 15 years of marriage? As ready as anyone can be for their wife to officially end their marriage. You want me to be nearby, just in case? No. This is something I need to handle alone. That evening, after Emma was asleep, I sat in the kitchen waiting for Elise. I'd made coffee, not because I wanted any, but because I needed something to do with my hands. The house felt different now, like a place I was visiting rather than living in. Everything looked the same, but the meaning had changed. Elise arrived at 9 o'clock, using her key to let herself in. She looked tired and thinner, like someone who'd been living on stress and bad decisions. She was carrying a suitcase. Is that everything? I asked. Just some clothes and personal things. I'll come back for the rest later if that's okay. Depends on where you're going. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table, in the same chair she'd occupied thousands of times over the years, the chair where she'd drunk her morning coffee, helped Emma with homework, and planned family vacations that we'd never take now. Julian left for France today. I know. Of course you do. You've been investigating him like he's a criminal. He is a criminal. Art forgery, tax evasion, visa fraud. Take your pick. The only reason he's not in jail is because he's smarter than the average criminal and luckier than he deserves. He's not a criminal. He's a good man who made some mistakes. He's a married man who seduced my wife and destroyed 2 marriages. If that's your definition of good, I'd hate to see what you consider bad. Elise folded her hands on the table, a gesture that reminded me of the woman I'd married. I'm going to France, Mark. I figured as much. When? Tomorrow? Tomorrow. After 15 years of marriage, she was giving me less than 24 hours' notice that she was leaving the country with another man. What about Emma? I want her to come with me. No. She's my daughter, too. She's our daughter, and I'm not letting you drag her into this mess. You want to blow up your life for a French art dealer with questionable business practices? That's your choice. But Emma stays here, in her home with her friends and her school, and the parent who didn't abandon her for a midlife crisis with an accent. Elise's eyes filled with tears. I'm not abandoning her. I'm trying to build a new life. You're abandoning everything, your marriage, your daughter, your responsibilities, for a man you've known for 6 months. That's not building a new life. That's running away from the one you already had. You don't understand what it's like being married to you. So you've said, what I don't understand is why you didn't try to fix our marriage instead of replacing it. When did we stop being partners and become strangers living in the same house? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't know. It happened gradually, and then suddenly it felt like we were just going through the motions. You were always working. I was always busy with Emma and my job, and we stopped seeing each other as people and started seeing each other as obligations. So you found someone who saw you as a person. Yes. Julian makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in years. And what happens when the novelty wears off? When you're living in France with a man who's already proven he can lie to the people who love him? What happens when you realize that the excitement you're feeling isn't love? It's just the adrenaline rush of doing something forbidden. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm making a mistake, but I have to find out for myself. I stared at her across the table, this woman I'd loved for 15 years, and realized that I was looking at a stranger. The Elise I'd married would never have abandoned her daughter for a romantic fantasy. The Elise I'd married would have fought for our marriage instead of replacing it. What do I tell Emma? Tell her I love her, and I'll send for her when I get settled. You're not sending for her. She's staying here. A judge might disagree. A judge will be very interested in hearing about your affair, your abandonment of your daughter, and your plan to move to a foreign country with a man who's under investigation by federal authorities. You want to roll those dice? She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. I never wanted it to end like this. Then don't let it. Stay. Fight for our marriage. Go to counseling with me. Try to remember why we fell in love in the first place. I can't. I'm sorry, Mark, but I can't. She stood up, picked up her suitcase, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back. I do love you. I want you to know that... No, you don't. You love the security I provided and the life we built together. But you don't love me, because if you did, you wouldn't be walking away. After she left, I sat in the empty kitchen and tried to figure out how I felt. Angry, certainly. Sad, definitely. But underneath the anger and sadness was something unexpected, relief. For 2 weeks, I'd been living in limbo, waiting for Elise to choose between her marriage and her affair. Now, she'd chosen, and while it wasn't the choice I'd hoped for, at least I knew where I stood. I was a single father with a 10-year-old daughter who needed stability, a house that felt too big for 2 people, and a marriage that had officially ended, not with a bang, but with a suitcase and a half-hearted apology. But I was also free. Free from wondering where my wife was and who she was with. Free from pretending our marriage was salvageable when it had been dead for months. Free to build a new life with Emma, one that didn't include lies and betrayal and French art dealers with questionable business ethics. The next morning, I told Emma that her mother had moved to France. Is she coming back? I don't think so, kiddo. Are you sad? Yeah, I'm sad. But I'm also relieved that we don't have to pretend everything's okay anymore. Emma nodded thoughtfully. Can we still get that dog? Yeah, Em, we can definitely get that dog. And for the first time in months, I smiled and meant it. 6 months later, Rico called with news. Your friend Julien got arrested in France, art forgery charges. Apparently, the FBI shared their findings with Interpol, and the French authorities decided to take another look at his business practices. What about Elise? Still in France, as far as I know, but she's not with Julian anymore. Hard to maintain a romantic relationship when one party is in jail awaiting trial. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and pity. Satisfaction that Julian was finally facing consequences for his actions. Pity that Elise had destroyed her marriage for a man who'd turned out to be exactly what I'd told her he was. You did good, Mark. Justice served, and you kept your hands clean. Emma and I were doing fine. Better than fine, actually. We'd gotten a golden retriever puppy named Justice Emma's idea and settled into a routine that worked for both of us. She was thriving in school, I was building my own private investigation business, and we'd learned to be a family of 2 plus 1 very energetic dog. Sometimes I missed being married. I missed having a partner, someone to share the daily victories and frustrations of raising a child and building a life. But I didn't miss the lies, the suspicion, or the feeling that I was living with a stranger who happened to share my last name. Emma never asked when her mother was coming back, and I never volunteered information about Elise's situation in France. Some wounds heal better when you stop picking at them. One evening, as Emma and I were walking Justice around the neighborhood, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. Dad, do you think Mom regrets leaving us? I thought about it carefully. I think she regrets how everything turned out. But I don't think she regrets the choices she made because she's the kind of person who always believes the grass is greener somewhere else. That's sad. Yeah, kiddo, it is. But we're okay, right? Just you and me and Justice? I looked at my daughter, walking beside me with dog leash in one hand and my hand in the other, and realized that we were more than okay. We were happy. Yeah, Em, we're perfect just the way we are. And this time I knew it was true.